Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Hisham Sayed. This video here will learn about construction insurance and surety bonds. This video is based on a previous video where we learned about construction risk management. So we kind of discussed the overall process of managing risks. Before that, we'll learn about what is risk and how to quantify risk. And then we learn about different approaches of handling risks and the different responses to risks. So we learn about that you can reject the risk, meaning that you reject the project with all the risk package that it comes with. You can accept the risk, and by setting contingency, you can mitigate the risk by reducing the probability of it, or you can transfer the risk to another party, which is, we discussed that insurance and surety bonding is a very clear example of transferring risks. So we'll understand here what are the available insurance policies and products that are available to transfer different construction risks. And we'll understand the relationship, the surety bonding relationship in a construction project, and the different surety bonding requirements for a typical construction project. So insurance is a way to transfer risk. Here you're required as a contractor in a lot of projects to buy specific insurance policies. But regardless, you as a contractor, as part of the risk management, you have to assess the risk and see if you need to buy any risk policy for specific risk possible events. So risks here cover only direct costs. So we discussed that in the construction law primer. But basically here, if there is an accident, you only cover the direct cost of the accident, not the consequential damages or costs of that. So insurance companies will not cover indirect costs, only the direct cost of an event or an accident. Though the main parties involved in an insurance contract is the insured, meaning that the entity that purchases the insurance policy. In this case here, the construction company generally is the one doing that. The insurer, so it's the insurance company, and then potentially you would be able or required by the owner to list the owner or maybe even the architect as an additional insured. So that's what you can do in contracts. An insurance policy, it's a two-party agreement, so it's between the GC and the insurance company. The insurer here promises to assume financial responsibility of any incident or losses that happen, but this is limited to only stipulated amount. So I'm sure, hopeful that you have a car and you have insurance on the car as required by law, and the insurance company will not give you a blank check for covering the losses if you get an accident. They will assess the value of the car, and they will tell you will cover up to this value. So it's the same in construction. In insurance policy, any insurance policy will cover up to a specific value. And in return of that, the insured, the contractor, will pay a fee, or what we call the premium, to the insurance company. And in some cases, there will be deductible, meaning that you would be responsible for the first amount of money that need to be spent to recover the losses, but after that, the insurance company will cover any more expenses. So these premiums and deductibles are not the same for different contractors, even for the same conditions and requirements of a construction project. Different contractors will pay different premiums, and that's based on the record of losses before. So the insurance company will study the contractor and see what's their track record of, are they careless, are they doing their job in managing the risks. So premiums and deductibles are fees that are unique to every company or contractor getting in every unique project. And construction companies here buy these contracts because they want to transfer it to a professional risk taker who have seen many projects and know how significant is a risky event in different projects, protect themselves against financial losses, and doing that by paying, yes, cost for that, but it's risk distributed over time. It's more predictable than dealing with a wild, risky event that you don't know how to deal with or where it will happen. Here, construction companies buy insurance policy from insurance agents or brokers. They're one of the professions who work in the construction industry. And insurance agents they have that intimate relationship with the construction company, so they know the ins and outs of a company, and they recommend and make good deals for them with insurance companies. So in this lesson here, we'll cover different insurance contracts and policies within these four main categories: property insurance of the project itself, the construction project itself; property insurance for the construction company and its assets; liability insurance; and business insurance. We'll not cover business insurance because that's more like a business management class, not for our project delivery class. So we'll cover the first three, starting with the first one here, the insuring the construction itself under that's being built here. So the first one here, the builder's risk insurance. So that's a first party insurance. Doesn't mean that it doesn't cover the third party. So the first party is the contractor, the second party is the insurance company, third party is the public around them. The builder's insurance cover only the asset that's being built, meaning that if you're building a hospital, it's the hospital building. But it doesn't cover any injuries that happen because of the collapse of this building. So that's covered by other things. And this builder's risk insurance covers the material that goes into building this building. Either it's stored on the site or in transit, being transported from the site, from the supplier, or even when it's paid for and it's just sitting on the supplier yard ready for shipping. That's also covered by the builder's risk insurance. It protects the owner, of course, of direct losses of fire happening in the building while it's being built, and also this means it protects the contractor also, and it also protects the subs working with the GC in this case. It covers the value of the contract, because that's the value of the building that was agreed upon between the owner and the contractor, plus any additional change orders. We'll cover change orders in the change orders lesson, but with every change order there's an increase or maybe decrease. It's a delta of the project or the contract amount. In addition to that, some owners would actually, outside of the contract scope, will do some additional work on their own or provide some additional material. Like, for example, you're building the building, but the owner with their own staff will install, for example, the curtains, or will install the kitchen appliances, so things like that. So this can be also included in the builder's risk insurance. The builder's risk insurance is valid as long as the building is under construction. You might jeopardize the insurance if you occupy the building and use it while it's being built. Can this happen? Yes, you can actually finish part of the building and start finishing the other part, and the first part you occupy, the owner comes in and start using it. In that case, you're jeopardizing the coverage of the builder's risk insurance. The builder's risk insurance can be covering all perils. So perils here is just a name for risky events, or it can exclude some specific events. And in this case here, specifically the earthquake and floods and fire. Fire usually included, but earthquakes and flood, this is can be excluded. In this case, you have to use what we call umbrella insurance. So we'll discuss that. But there are more typically, there are other things that are excluded. For example, faulty workmanship or materials, so that's not covered. It's not the insurance company mistake that you used bad material or bad construction methods. Breakdown of machinery, and machinery here, it's not the construction equipment itself, meaning that the crane and the excavator. Machinery here is the building equipment, so like the heating, ventilation, plumbing equipment. Like if you have a compressor or air handling unit, So things that has a lot of like deal with air pressure or heating that has fuel in it, so that can explode, right? Boilers, that these can explode and damage the building. So if this happens, it's not covered by the builder's risk insurance during construction, covered by its own insurance, which is boiler and machinery insurance. Things due to design, that's covered by professional liability insurance, so that's not also covered. One thing here that's important to understand is the right of subrogation. Subrogation here means that it's a right of the insurer, meaning that the insurance company, to recover on behalf of the insured party, which is the general contractor or the owner in this case also, from those who caused the loss. So what happens here, maybe one of the subs was welding something and sparks caused the fire and burned down the whole thing. Now, with the subrogation right, you are allowing the insurance company, yes, to cover the expense of such damage, but it will go and retrieve the money from the sub who caused that damage. That's the right of subrogation. Now, a lot of contracts ask the different parties involved in the project to waive the subrogation right. This means that you are telling the insurance company that you can't go behind me and ask for or recover the losses of from the builder's risk insurance from my partners in the project. That builds that team spirit in the project by waiving the subrogation, which insurance companies can accept, but they need to know ahead in written documents. It has to be documented in the contract that you're waiving the subrogation, so they will price the insurance policy differently. So you have to understand here the mechanics of subrogation, waiving the subrogation, implication of waiving the subrogation in a construction project. Other insurance policies related to the property of the project itself. There is the bridge insurance. So if you are building a bridge, that's a different kind of entity or property that needs a different insurance policy. And then we talked about boiler and machinery. So here we have boilers in the basement of a building. There's more risk into that than just the structure of the building, so they need a different insurance policy for that. So that's the first category of insurance contracts or policies. The second one is property insurance for the company itself, meaning that the contractor. So here, the contractor needs to buy an insurance for their own equipment. So dozers, excavators, like you buy insurance for your own car, you would buy insurance for your dozer or equipment. If you as a contractor own a building or your shop, then you need to buy an insurance for your building. Like you own a home, you buy a home insurance. So it's the same. Automobile, like you have your personal car, you have your trucks, for the foreman, for the superintendent, for the project personnel to move around, you need to insure these. And then for specific special marine equipment, so like building on top of a waterway, your equipment is on this waterway, or they're now marine equipment, you have to insure them differently. And the last thing here is transportation. So transportation insurance or floater insurance. So floater insurance is it covers properties that are being transported. So like for example, if you're moving from one place to another, you're moving your your furniture and all of that, you can buy a transportation insurance for that. In construction, it can happen. Like you can have an item that you want to insure while it's in transit, but we know that the builder's risk insurance cover the material while they are in transit. So this is why floater insurance is not that much used in construction. It might cover some equipment if it's not covered in transit by its own equipment insurance. So transportation floater insurance can be applied, but in very rare cases, like you can say in construction. The last thing here that we'll cover in terms of insurance contracts will not cover business, like I said, liability insurance. Liability is generally any damage that you cause to a third party. So if you are an owner and a contractor, first party, second party, a third party is anything outside of such contract. Um, and you're being sued for that. So you cause injury to someone, an entity, then they will sue you. Because you cause liability issues here. And liability insurance can cover a lot of things. So we'll cover mainly three, but briefly here I'll mention the others. So umbrella liability insurance it's an insurance policy that covers anything that's not covered by the others. So like a specific risk peril that you can see it's happening, but it's not covered by a typical or standard policy, then you buy an umbrella to include it. Or umbrella is a way also to combine different insurance policies. Pollution, so if your project you expect to work or in a state that has rigorous environmental requirements, and they might require you to buy a pollution insurance to clean the environment. Let's say if you cause any leakage of harmful material. Railroad is an insurance that's required by transit agencies if you're going to work within the premises of railroads, and that's another one. Directors and officers, this insurance covering the CEOs and officers and directors of the company when they make business decisions that may expose them personally to liability. And then the employment practices, so you buy insurance to cover your employees if they did a mistake that relates to discrimination or sexual assault. So any kind of discrimination, you will be amazed by how many lawsuits that come from discrimination liabilities, and companies would buy insurance to cover that, of course. But of course, they need to have their HR, human resources people, will train their employees to avoid these discriminations from the beginning, but still they need insurance for that. So the first liability insurance here is the commercial general liability insurance. By the way, it's not only for construction, it's for any business. Typically, the state will require you to have a general liability insurance to operate a business. In construction, is the same. Like a construction company is a business. So they cover injuries or property loss sustained by others. So someone got in your company office and they drank a coffee, they got sick. So in that case, you will need to pay them for that injury or loss. So general liability insurance will cover that. It doesn't cover protect against your own losses. So as a general contractor, you will not the general liability will not cover your own losses from such incident. It covers anything that happens within the premises or operations of your operations. It covers also independent contractor coverage, meaning that it covers anything comes from indemnity agreement. So we'll cover more indemnity in a very short period when we talk about bonds. But basically, if your subs did a mistake that caused injury to someone, a third party, that person can sue you also. So you can have your general liability insurance covering independent contractors working with you, or subcontractors. And then if you build something and then someone got injured, if you built a highway and someone got injured on this highway, they might be really kind of aggressive and actually suing you because you built this road, and sue the Department of Transportation, let's say. So that's a completed operation coverage. Not It can happen, but most of the things happen when like the coverage happens the premises and operation related liabilities. General liability doesn't cover a lot of things. So first of all, damages by employees because it's the employee mistake, or damages to the company. So by employees or from employees, this is not covered. Or injuries to the employees, that's covered by workers' comp. We'll cover that. Or pollution, or the transit operations, or damages to the building you are building. It's not your own building, or damages to because of so property damage in general is not covered by general liability insurance. So just because it's called general liability insurance doesn't mean that it covers a lot of things. There's always exclusion in insurance policies. Then the next important one is worker comp. So workers' compensation insurance. It's no fault insurance. Typically, that's the case. It depends on states. Some states can actually make it a fault insurance. What does it mean, no fault insurance? So you cannot, a GC cannot deny a claim from an insured employee if they got injured, because I would say this employee didn't pay attention. They were negligent. So, so if I got injured, I would use my liability, worker comp insurance to cover my surgery expenses and also pay me for whatever number of days I have to stay home. The GC that's hiring me cannot say, oh, you were not actually paying attention, you were looking this way while you're using the saw, so they cannot deny my right for coverage. And the other way, me as an employee cannot sue the employer because I would say they were negligent. They didn't take the safety measures that are required to protect me. You wouldn't have actually the option as an employee to say I will use a personal injury lawsuit versus or claim versus a liability or a worker comp claim. Worker comp claim is just covering your losses, but personal injury claim is actually covering a lot of other things. So, but it's a risk you have to take. You might file a personal injury claim and it gets rejected, so you're basically going out with nothing. So you have to be careful here. The worker comp insurance covers the benefits here. Like I said, the medical costs, loss of earnings if you stay at home because you cut your finger. They will pay you whatever salary you would have got if you went to work. And if you have a disability, then there will be a value for that. Losing this such ability, there will be a compensation for that. Now, worker comp insurance, you pay premium for these, like any insurance, and these premiums are calculated based on the payroll of that employee. And these premiums are different from a worker to a worker or a type of worker. It depends on the type of worker because it depends on the degree of risk of such worker. So that's defined by a base rate. So that's the state Workers' Compensation Board says that for this type of worker, like painter versus electrician, there is a base rate that will be used to calculate the premium, the base premium here. So kind of for every $100 of their wages, you need to pay $2 as a base premium for them. So relative to direct wages, you will identify how much total premium you pay. And this base premium is adjusted by the EMR factor. And this EMR factor, or experience modification ratio, it measures how this company is safe compared to the average of the industry. So you aggregate claims over a 3-year period. So you look at the previous years and you see how many safety or worker comp claims that were filed against your insurance, your company insurance here. You compare that to the expected or the average claims of the industry or people, companies in the same size of your company. And then you modify the premium by multiplying EMR with the base premium. So that's how a premium is paid by a company to cover the workers as part of the worker compensation. Just to give you an idea here, this is the workers, that's from RS Means, one of the famous references used in construction courses. But you can see here for different trades, there is worker compensation insurance rate that's different. So tile layers will have 8%. So this means that for every $100 of salary I'm paying for a tile layer worker, I'm paying on top of that 8% to buy them as a premium, base premium, to buy them compensation or pay for their worker compensation. Compare that to a structural steel painter who are working in the air, hanging in the air. I'm paying $42.2 for their worker compensation. For every $100 I'm paying for their salary. That's a lot of money, right? And that's magnified even if I'm not the safety record of my company is not that well. I will actually that premium will be increased. So this is why companies care a lot about safety. Of course, they care about their employees and workers, but the EMR can actually get companies out of business because over time they make accidents, they keep the workers injured. At the end, the worker comp insurance can be really prohibitive for them, and they just can pay for it, and it's required by state and by contracts, so they go out of business. The next insurance is errors and omissions insurance. That covers design professionals because of their negligence and not doing the standard of care practice. So you as a general contractor might be required to buy such errors and omissions insurance. It's usually architects and engineer buying it or paying it. But if you are doing a professional CM service or getting into CMAR, project delivery, you might be exposed to that. Or probably if you're dealing with design build projects, then as a GC, now you're design builder, you will be responsible to cover the errors and omissions. And if your subs are doing any engineering services like detailed design and engineering of a mechanical system or electrical system, they will also need to cover errors and omissions. The errors and omissions cover the legal defense costs because of if any lawsuit comes or any costs that need to be of fixing the error. So that's covered, but it doesn't cover the failure to complete the design drawings or do the engineering service that's expected. That's not covering that. So all of that is the insurance. A lot of things covered by insurance, but there are other risks that are covered by surety bonding. So surety, it means here that there is an entity, a party that assumes the liability of performance of another party. So here we have the owner, we have the contractor. There is a kind of a middle entity, which is the surety company, that tells the owner, Mr. Owner, I guarantee that the contractor will perform whatever obligation they have to you. And this is why it's called three-party contract, because actually every one of these three signs in this contract: the contractor, the surety company, and the owner. The surety company will cover all obligations that the contractor is expected to provide to the owner, and they call it the penal sum. Penal means that because if the contractor is not able to perform the obligation, they will be penalized by whatever sum of money that the value of their services, you can say. The surety company will provide credit, so they will set aside some of their own money, the surety company money, to say that's a set money in case the contractor doesn't perform the obligation they owe you, Mr. Owner. And in return of that, the contractor will pay premium, similar to the insurance premium, which is around 1 to 3% of the bond value. It's a lot of money. So you're talking about a project that's $100 million. You're paying just to have that surety. You're paying $1 million or $3 million for that. So and bond premium here is based on a lot of factors. It's based on the project cost, like I mentioned, the duration, the contractor financial condition. So that it's the premium is dependent on a lot of factors here. Bonds are required because public projects require them, private projects and private owner require them, or you require your subs and suppliers to provide them. One important key here is that, so thinking about it, why a surety company would put their own skin into that game, just in return of a premium here, 1 to 3% of the project value, because they have the indemnity right, so indemnity agreement here. So the construction company eventually will pay for that money. So the company here will sign the contract with the surety company saying, if I fail, you actually have the right to go after me and get all my assets, strip me of all the assets, all the cash, everything I have. When I go out of business, it's all yours to cover the expense of the surety bond or the penal sum. One thing here, there might be some personal guarantees needed if you're dealing with a corporation, so they'll not go into details of that, but surety companies have their own way of securing or protecting them in case of the failure. So they guarantee that there no failure happens, but if it happens, they're prepared for that. So this is an indemnity agreement here. This is just an example of it. Of course, it's fictitious from a textbook, but it just, if you read it, you get a sense of what's really happening here. The surety bonds here have different types, and everyone is used for a purpose. Let's start with the bid bond. So the bid bond is a guarantee that the successful bidder, the lowest price bidder, will commit to the requirements and enter into the contract with the owner if they got selected. If the contractor here, selected contractor or bidder, is not gonna go into the contract, then the owner will deal with the second lowest bidder. So if the lowest bidder is 1 million and the second lowest bidder is 1.5 million, the bid's 1 million, 1.5 million. If the 1 million bidder lowest bid is not gonna commit, so the owner goes to the 1.5 million bidder, which means as if like the owner now is losing 500K. So that difference is covered by the bid bond. You don't know, of course, the difference before the bid, but the bid bonds here cover about 5 to 20% of the total bid. So to account to the typical difference between the first lowest bidder and the second lowest bidder. And of course, you pay, of course, a premium to get this bid bond. So you can see here, that's an example of a bid bond. It's between Western States Construction Company, and there is the surety company, and there is the owner of the project, the city of Seattle, and the value, the penal sum here is 985. That's about 10 or 5 to 10% of the value of the bid. It's not that much money, so it's only covering that difference between the first and the second bidder. And you can see here, it's signed by the construction company and the surety company. Now, after you get, okay, you submitted a bid, you have the bid bond, you sign the bid, then you return, you cancel that bid bond, and then you buy another bond, which is performance bond. So now the contractor paying for performance bond to guarantee that the contractor will perform the work. And this is why the penal sum here is not like 5 or 20% of the total or the bid value. It's 100% of the contract value now because you have a contract. Same thing, if you go out of business or you don't commit to the project or finish it, the surety company will go after you and your assets and strip you all of what's needed to cover the penal sum. And the bond here is active for the total duration of the project plus 1 year of warranty typically. You can see here it's kind of the similar kind of entities involved, but you have here this value here is bigger now than the previous value we had for the bid bond. So that's now the performance bond. Labor and material bond is called also payment bond. So it's guaranteed that the contractor will pay the sub entities under them to protect the owner from what we call the mechanics lien. So if the electrical sub is working for the GC and the GC is building the building for the facility for the owner, the GC got paid from the owner, and they are expected to pay the electrical contractor, but they didn't. The electrical contractor have the right to claim a lien on the property, which is called the mechanics right, so mechanics lien. So I provided service to the owner, yes, through the contractor, the GC, but I didn't get paid, so who's ultimately paying me? It's the owner. So I go to the owner and say, part of your property is mine now. Until you pay me money, I will remove this lien. That's a right provided by law. So to avoid that risk to the owner requires that the contractor buys a payment bond covering such incidents. So now this is the GC, this is the surety company, this is the city of Seattle, and the payment bond here is the same value of the performance bond. Maintenance bond is called also warranty bond. So if you say I give a warranty for the roof or the boiler, so if for anything that's exceeding the typical 1 year warranty of a project, you provide a special warranty for that. With that, you have a warranty bond or maintenance bond, and that's a percentage of the value of the contract depending on the value of that asset you provide a special warranty for. So here, that's the construction company, surety company, and that's the client or the customer. You can see here that's a different bond value here. And if you read through that example, it's actually providing warranty for the roof. So typically, roof is provided a warranty depending on the type of the roofing. It can be 5, 10, or even 20 years warranty. So you have to have a bond for such warranty. And then the supply bond. And now that's not a bond that kind of related to the relation between the owner and the contractor. It's the relation between the contractor, the GC, and suppliers. So here, it's kind of mimicking the relation between the owner and GC, but now it's between GC and the supplier. So the surety company here guarantees the supplier that the material will be provided on time with the quality that's requested. So we see here now the parties involved. It's the electrical contractor, and then the GC, and then the surety company. There is no owner in the picture here, and that's the value of the materials or the services that need to be provided. So to summarize here, sorry for the long video here, but we'll summarize here what's the difference between surety bonds and insurance. Take a minute, just review what we discussed before, and I'm giving you hints here. What are the comparison points between them? So hopefully you have an idea. You pause the video and have a rough idea here. So surety bonds are three-party agreement. So you have to mention the owner in that agreement as a kind of a entity within that involved in that relationship. But insurance is it's a two-party agreement. You have the option to include the owner, but it's not required legally. The period of obligation for surety bond, it's until completion plus 1 year, so it's flexible. But for insurance, it has to be stated that the insurance is covering a specific period. The coverage for surety bond, it covers performance. So it covers, it's a surety for performance, but insurance, it's coverage of specific perils or risky events that might happen. Indemnity for bonds, yes, indemnity agreement exists. So here the surety company have the right to go and claim or kind of get your assets to recover the losses that because you did not perform as expected. But insurance, you don't have that, and you have the waiver of subrogation. Typically, contracts call for that, and insurance company understand this and accept it as part of the insurance policy. So that's it. It's a lot of things covered in this lesson because insurance and surety covers it's the main methods of dealing with risks in construction projects. They're all transfer approach to the risk. The best way of dealing with risk, of course, is mitigating risk because now your operations and business processes are always aware of risks and they're trying to minimize your exposure to risk by the way you manage the project. But transferring risk is you just pay money and in return of insurance and surety companies to help you if things go wrong. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in class and other videos. Take care.